Long before the roads were scarred with black tar and the loud, angry growl of machines drowned out the voices of wisdom, there stood a village. A village where people lived not just by sight, but by listening. The houses here were not made of brick and mortar, but shaped from mud and clay by hands that understood the art of patience. The very air you breathed carried the sweet, smoky scent of firewood and the rich, damp smell of fresh earth. Every single sunrise was welcomed not as a guarantee, but as a gift, with deep gratitude. In this special village, the elders were not rich in gold or land. Their wealth was far greater. It was knowledge. Their words carried the heavy weight of countless seasons, of storms weathered and survived, of life understood. But something had begun to change, like a slow, creeping mist. The children of the village were many. They were strong, full of life, and wonderfully playful. But a carelessness had taken root in their hearts. A carelessness that would soon shape a lesson so profound, it would be carved deep into the memory of every person there. From the first light of dawn until the last rays of sunset, the children ran through the village like an untamed, wild wind. Their barefoot feet kicked up clouds of dust, and their laughter echoed through the narrow, winding paths between the huts. But their laughter had lost its joyfulness. It had become tinged with disrespect. They would burst into the middle of important conversations, their voices louder than those of the adults. They would run past their elders without a word of greeting, their eyes fixed on their games. And when corrected, they would openly mock the words of wisdom offered to them. When an elder began to speak, the children would simply play louder, drowning out the voice of experience. When their mothers warned them of danger, the children would just run faster, as if speed could outrun consequence. You could hear them whispering to each other, their voices dripping with scorn. The elders talk too much, one would say. All they do is tell stories of the past. Another would add, laughing. They were too young, too full of themselves, to understand that the past was the very rope holding their future together. The elders watched all of this quietly. The elders watched all of this quietly. There was no shouting. There was no punishment. There was only a heavy, knowing silence. One evening, as the sun rested low on the horizon and painted the sky in shades of gold and orange, the entire village gathered in the central square. An elder, his movements slow and deliberate, stood up. His hair was as white as ash, and his dark skin was a beautiful map of wrinkles, each one telling a story of time. His voice, when he spoke, was not loud, but it was heavy, filled with a power that made everyone, even the restless children, pause for a moment. When a child closes his ears, he said, his voice calm and steady, the world opens its hands to teach him. The children, after a moment of stunned silence, burst into laughter. They mimicked his slow, careful walk. They whispered insults just loud enough for him to hear. But the elder did not get angry. He simply nodded his head slowly, his eyes full of a deep sadness. The ear that rejects advice, he continued, his voice barely a whisper but carrying across the square, will one day have no choice but to listen to pain. That night, as the moon climbed high into the sky, the elders met. There was no noise from their meeting, no arguments, no rushed decisions. They did not choose anger. They chose patience. The next morning dawned strangely, unnervingly quiet. No elder called the children to help with the morning chores. No mother corrected their boisterous games. No one stopped them from doing anything at all. The children noticed the change, of course, but they were pleased. They saw it not as a warning, but as a victory. Finally, they thought, we are free. They ate whatever they wanted, without restraint, wasting precious food. They took the clay calabashes used for drinking water and broke them, using the shards to drum out chaotic rhythms. They turned the sharp, heavy farming tools into toys for their reckless games. The day wore on, and the consequences of their actions began to unfold. Goats, their pens left unlatched, escaped and wandered off. Sacks of stored grain, knocked over in their play, spilled onto the dirt. The cooking fires, left unattended, slowly died out, leaving behind nothing but cold ash. And still, no one spoke a word to them. The children laughed, their voices ringing with false confidence. They believed that this chaos, this freedom, was a sign of their victory. As night began to fall, a new feeling crept into the village, a feeling as quiet and persistent as the growing darkness. It was hunger. The cooking pots, which were usually bubbling with delicious stews, were cold and empty. No one had prepared the evening meal. The children, their stomachs beginning to ache, started searching for food, but they found only the mess they had created. Fear, a sensation they rarely felt, whispered softly in their ears. "Why is nobody calling us for dinner?" one child asked, his voice trembling slightly. Another child shivered, though the night was warm. "Where are the elders?" he whispered into the darkness. But there was no answer. That night, sleep did not come easily. The familiar comfort of their village had vanished, replaced by an unsettling, alien silence. Morning returned, but the comfort they longed for did not. The gnawing hunger in their bellies was now a loud, angry roar. The children, desperate, tried to cook for themselves, but they didn't know how to light the fires properly or what ingredients to use. They tried to go to the fields to farm, but the tools they had used as toys were now broken and useless. Frustration grew, and soon they began to argue, blaming one another for the mess they were in. By midday, hunger had bent their proud backs. The energy they once had for running and playing was gone. One of the younger children, unable to stand any longer, collapsed under the very same baobab tree where the elders once sat and shared their stories. And then, the first tear fell. Soon, others joined in, their small bodies shaking with sobs. "We didn't know," one cried out, his voice choked with regret. "We didn't listen." Then, slow, steady footsteps echoed through the quiet village. The elders emerged from their huts, their faces not angry, not proud, but calm and full of a deep, sorrowful understanding. The oldest elder, the one who had spoken the night before, walked to the center of the weeping children. He spoke again, his voice gentle but firm. "We did not abandon you," he said. "We simply stepped aside so that life itself could speak to you." He pointed a wrinkled finger towards the empty cooking pots and the spilled grain. "Disrespect," he said, his words hitting them harder than any physical punishment, "eats faster than hunger." In that moment, the children understood. One by one, they knelt on the ground. The dust stained their knees, and tears streaked clean paths down their dirty faces. Together, their voices united in a chorus of pure remorse. They whispered, "We are sorry." The elders did not scold them. Their lesson was not about punishment, but about understanding. They taught. They showed the children how to mend the broken tools, how to coax a fire back to life, how to grind the grain and cook the porridge. They showed them how to greet someone with respect, and most importantly, they taught them how to listen, not just with their ears, but with their hearts. Day by day, order and harmony returned to the village. But this time, it was different. This time, when the elders spoke, the children watched. They listened, and they learned. Years passed. Those children grew into adults, and eventually, those adults became the new elders of the village. And whenever new generations of children laughed a little too loudly or ran a little too carelessly, one of those elders would gather them close, a gentle smile on their face, and say, "Sit. Let me tell you a story." A lesson that is learned through silence is a lesson that is never, ever forgotten. And so, in that village, respect returned, not through fear, but through wisdom. This is the lesson the children will never forget. Thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of wisdom.